All right, well, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get going. I will call the meeting to order, and to establish quorum, we'll just go around the room and introduce commissioners, tell us a little bit of background, and we'll do that to establish quorum. So we'll go around this way.
Hi, I'm Kaylee Kurth. I am from Weatherford. I work at Southwestern College of Pharmacy as a rural health pharmacist, but I represent the PARB board on this commission.
Jeffrey Cartmel, Director of Oklahoma Human Services.
I am the governor's appointee representing business and industry. I'm the president of Warburg Capital Management in Tulsa.
I'm Ellen Bittner. I'm the CEO of the Oklahoma Healthcare Authority.
Keith Reed, Commissioner of Health, Director of the Oklahoma State Department of Health.
Jason Hicks, District Attorney from District 6, which is Caddo, Grady, Stephens, and Jefferson counties.
Mike Warren, I'm a judge of the district court. I represent the Supreme Court, and I also chair the Juvenile Justice Oversight Advisory Committee.
Perfect. I'm John Schneider with Youth and Family Services, representing the Oklahoma Association of Youth Services. And then just have Jackie walked in.
Am I next?
Yeah. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. Jacqueline Aaron. I'm the representative for CASA.
Perfect. All right, we have quorum. All right, we also have Assistant Attorney General Sandra Bowser here. Thank you for being with us. And we have quorum. Is there anybody signed up for public comment? Okay, nobody signed up for public comment. We'll move on to agenda item number 3. Review of the minutes from the November 22nd, 2024 meeting. Discussion and possible vote.
Move they be approved as read.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call roll.
Commissioner Aaron,
Yes.
CEO Bittner. Yes. Director Cartmel,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
District Attorney Hicks,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Judge Warren,
Yes.
Passes. All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is agenda item number 4, presentation from the Parent Partnership Board. This is always one of my favorite parts of the meeting, to get an update from this. So I'm going to welcome up Mitch Sutter to give a presentation from them.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you all for being here. First and foremost, I'm Mitch Sutter. I'm a member of the Parent Partnership Board. I'm a foster father, stepfather, and a biological father. I'm also a person living in long-term recovery. I work at a rural healthcare center in rural eastern Oklahoma. We have a reentry and diversion program. We try to help individuals that are incarcerated get to treatment instead of just sending them to prison. Kind of my why I'm here. Like I said, I suffered with substance use disorder for a long time. It made it impossible for me to be the father that I wanted to be. I spent 8+ years in active addiction. My gateway drug to addiction was trauma. 2011, my first son was born, and 6 days later, he had passed away. I'd been hurt. I was working in the oil field right around the time the opiate epidemic swept through rural eastern Oklahoma. I had a prescription of pain pills and the loss of my son, so I had all the justification I thought I needed. I spent 8 years setting my life on fire. I wasn't suicidal, but I was indifferent to death. Death seemed like not a bad thing, which was a scary thought. I was lucky enough to get arrested and end up in the drug court program in District 16, LaFleur, Haskell, and Latimer counties. I was able to complete the drug court program and got a job as a peer recovery support specialist with the Health and Wellness. I did that for 2 years and was given the opportunity to go back to drug court and become the coordinator of the same program I was once a client. I did that for around 1.5 years when I was given the opportunity to come back and work on a SAMHSA grant to do our own reentry and diversion program. I guess the biggest change I would like to say when it comes to substance use disorder and how that affects Oklahoma families, and everyone in this room knows somebody that's suffering or has suffered with substance use disorder. I would love to see us all come together more. There seems to be a divide between judicial treatment, law enforcement, church, and everybody thinks their way is the best way. And the best way is the one that works for that individual. Individuals suffering in substance use disorder work together. Whether they're alcoholics or they're on meth, they will all work together. They will all communicate. I would like to see us do the same. It puts us at a huge disadvantage when we're fragmented. I want to thank y'all so much for being here. If you know anybody suffering, it isn't over. I'll end before my questions set. If y'all have any questions, I'd love to answer them, but I want to end with a quote from Martin Luther King. He said, "Only when it's dark enough can we see the stars." For me and my personal story, that is so important because I thought the bad things I'd done in my life were going to be a blemish, but really they're the backdrop that allow the things I do today to shine through. Recovery is possible. It brings families together. My last charge I got that got me into drug court was a child neglect charge because my camping trailer I lived in got raided and my son was there. Now, a great father, I'm a very good uncle. Children are safe around me. Because recovering is because of people like you. Thank you all so much. Any questions? Disclaimer, I am 100% an open book. You can't offend me, you can't bother me. Questions?
Who do you feel like helped you, or what system helped you the most that really helped you get over those barriers?
It goes back to that collaborative effort. It was definitely a combination. If law enforcement had never put me in cuffs, I never would have stopped. If the judge would have, or the DA would have never gave me a chance at drug court, I would have never found treatment. And if treatment didn't show me they care, I would have never cared about me.
I just want to say thank you so much for presenting to us today. And I know it takes a lot of courage to talk about your story, and you do that very well. So I appreciate you sharing your story to benefit others and also, encourage us to continue in the good work that we do. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Questions on once?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
All right, well, next on the agenda is agenda item number 5, discussion of possible vote on the approval of the finance report. And I will turn it over to Mahbub Al-Haq for our finance presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, respected commissioners and colleagues. I appreciate your time and presence today as we present finance report for the fiscal year 2025, covering activities up to December 31st, 2024. My name is Mahbub Al-Haq, business manager at OCCY, and I am here with the same old presentation, but definitely with the updated numbers. And that will give you the overview of our financial standings and key insights for the past 6 months. So this slides basically provide the snapshot of the total budget we have allocated for the financial year 2025, which stands at 5.9 million. As of December 31st, 2024, we have utilized 1.9 million. This percentage becomes 67% of the for the total budget. And overall, our budget utilization remains on track with the planned program activities in the remaining months. This slide breaks down the budget utilization across the major account categories. Personal services, 40% we have utilized of the total budget. Travel expenses, 44%. 158% for the administrative, and 25% for the property expenses, furniture, equipment, and general grants, 12%. So overall, our total utilization is 33%. And if you take we take the year-to-date budget for the 6 months, it's 67%. So it shows overall underutilization, particularly in the program-related direct payments. And you see it's the largest allocation in this category is 1.4 million. And basically these are payments for the disbursement to the entities. And their financial year starts from the January 2025. So we are in process of disbursement to the entity teams, funds to the entity teams. Hopefully this will be dispersed in the coming month, and you will see a good change against this category. This is just the graphic presentations. And if we see the little more details for the subhead accounts, this is the picture overall with the detailed expense account. And if we look at the spendings as per the department wise, administration remains the 92% utilized as per the 6 months of the budget. The general system oversight, 89% of the utilized as per the year-to-date allocation. And we see the multidisciplinary teams, department 44, it's a 17%. As I told you earlier, this is the aligned with the programmatic priorities, and it will be dispersed in the coming month. And most of the disbursement is related to the teams at field. This shows our spending trend. And by month wise, if you see the December is the highest spending month. And as I told you that this relates to the program activities scheduled and entity disbursements. Overall, our spending trend is smooth and aligned with our planned activities, and it ensures that funds are available as per the plan, as per the program activities. Cash report, and this is our cash budgets. We have $233,073.37 as per related to the last budget, financial year 2024. We are working for the budget revision, and that is already accumulated in the coming year. So we are working on the revision, and hopefully this will be taken care of in next month. And for the current financial year, we have $192,376. For the revolving fund, we have $660,000. And for the capital fund disbursement is a 1.1 million, almost 1.2 million. So total, we have total cash balance of 2.2 million. And this aligns with our programs and future obligations. Overall, the commissioner packet include these three important financial reports that is generated from the people swap. The key insights for the last 2 months, we have budget hearing sessions for the upcoming financial year 2026, and we have requested 650,752 dollars for the increase in state appropriations. Overall disbursement of Canada Fund is in progress, and we have started disbursement, and that will be completed by the end of this month or in the first week of the Feb. And hopefully you will see the disbursement completed by the next month. And there are changes in the OMIS, ABS. We have a new finance manager, Stephanie Bepp. She has joined last month, and during the interim period, Megan Patton has supported us in going through all that financial transactions at the OMIS. And the rest, the things are in place, all the compliances, reviews, and regular support the team and colleagues are in place. In summary, overall financial performance for the first half of the 2025 reflects the disciplined management and aligned with our plans. And in the end, extend my gratitude to you all, and I'm happy to take any questions or provide further details on any aspect of the report.
Any questions?
I have a question. And I know you kind of explained it a couple different ways, but the MDT. So I heard you say that they work off of a different calendar than we do. Is that right? So they go calendar year, we go state fiscal year.
Yes.
And I know we've only paid a portion of that. So is it a one-time payment for year, or are they paid monthly, quarterly? How is their reimbursement tied? I'm trying to reconcile in my head how that they have a calendar year of 12 months. Ours goes from state fiscal year, and we're 6 months in and we paid 12% or whatever. So can you help me just to understand that a little better on how that payment works and how in a 6-month period we catch up on that?
We follow the state fiscal year, as you said, and the MDT, their calendar year is the financial year. So they start from the January and end at the December. So basically, it's a one-time payment. For they close whenever they close the last financial year, they start submitting the reports, and whatever left, unspent funds left, they return to us, and we return back to the DHS.
So they get one payment a year. So what they're giving us coming up invoices should be for the previous calendar year.
Yes.
Okay.
Director Jacoby?
I want to correct just a little bit about that. Sorry, Mr. Hulk. So statute allows, this is a real anomaly, so it'll sound different for those of us who used to government finance where you pay up front and then you seek reimbursement. The MDTs run on a calendar year, and they are allowed to receive all payment for the future year, January 1. So we work to get those contracts in place January 1, so OMES can kick out their money for all of the future fiscal year. They've closed their state fiscal year 25 in December of 24. And I mean, I don't know of any other system like this. And then they get their money up front. The law was changed 5 years ago, I'm gonna say, so maybe 6 years ago, maybe more than that. After I came, because what we learned, most of the MDTs don't have money to pay for things up front. They're not an entity per se. So there wasn't a fiscal agency who could like float all of these expenses and then seek reimbursement. So we got an accommodation for them in statute. So unlike any other program I'm aware of, there might be something, they get their money before they do the work. And then at the end of the year, what they have not spent, we collect and we give back to DHS. And then they throw it back in the kitty and it goes back through the formula and it goes out for the future year. So it is, you are correct. It sounds very different. And what Mr. Alhelka is trying to explain is that OMES cuts these checks. We get those contracts in place, we put them in place, but it takes OMES a while and it takes the MDTs a while to create an invoice and then they cut it out. And so while we would love for them to have that money January 1, the reality is that it usually takes anywhere for a month or two for them to receive those funds. And some of them are quicker at submitting that invoice for the total year and some of them are not. So that's kind of where we are. By the end of February, my guess is all that money will be out the door.
Thank you.
I totally if you're used to the reimbursement process, it just sounds wonky. But it's one of those things where we want to accommodate people who are doing great work and they don't have the money to float it, but it requires a lot of work on our part then to draw that back at the end of the year and then make sure everything is reconciled. And Mr. Alholt does a great job of that and including Brittany of monitoring that and saying, you know, according to us, you know, let's look at what you spent and what you did not, and then cut us a check and then we pass that on to DHS.
So unallowable expenses would be picked up at the end of the year. When
Correct,
you do the reconciliation,
correct.
if there are any.
Although the statute's pretty clear that that money is never ours and it is not considered part of our like budget. And so they have a lot of leniency. 99.9% of it all goes towards training or equipment. And so we do watch that. If they put in something that was absolutely inappropriate and we saw that, we would challenge that. And we have challenged it over the years. But it's a, I'm gonna say it's kind of what I would say a labor of love. I mean, it's worth the added work in the system so that they can have that money up front. Without it, some of them wouldn't be able to do what they do. Because they don't have the money to say, we're all gonna go to Crimes Against Children conference and we can all afford to put that on cards, or our agencies can foot that. They can't do it. And this way they can do those things. And I think it's really good.
I kind of have weathered the wave, I guess, in the last 20 years and where it was, you know, like it is now. And then I was part of the reimbursement only process and it really was very burdensome to our smaller MDTs that didn't have a fiscal, you know, big entity to prepay for equipment for our interview room and, you know, those big items. And then our detectives or DHS workers, if they're going to training, I mean, they really couldn't put it on their card and then wait for the system to reimburse them. It was really a hardship. So I know it's hard on our end, but it really is.
It makes a difference to you, I think.
And it's pretty clear on what they can spend their money on too, what they can't.
And it's voted on and those, you know, your teams vote on that.
It's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be. And that's one of the things we would look for in an annual review is, you know, were the expenses. Was this a group decision or did someone one day decide, hey, because once in a while, something like that might happen. So.
Good discussion. Any other questions for Mr. O'Hack?
Move to approve the finance report.
Thank you.
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, please call roll.
Commissioner Aaron,
Yes.
CEO Bittner,
Yes.
Director Cartmill,
Yes.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
District Attorney Hicks,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Judge Moore,
Yes.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is agenda item number 6, presentation from the Oklahoma Credit Union and the OCCY Youth Banking Partnership. Thank you so much for being here today, and I will turn the floor over to Tammy Kilman.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. I'm just going to do a quick introduction, and then I'm going to introduce Amanda Kirby. A little over a year ago, we were presented with a challenge that OCCY, the committee, had in meeting a goal that they had, a long-term goal to provide a safe place for transitioning or unhoused youth, in storing their deposits and building relationships that will assist them in some long-term financial needs to success. We all count on our financial establishment that we have, and we use them every day, and sometimes I think we take that for granted. And there was a need there. And we were excited, and I have been honored to be a part of building a program that we call our Youth Financial Literacy Program that is extending that banking access to youth without a guardian. So I'm going to bring Amanda up. She's going to tell you a little bit about what we've built, what we've done, what we're going to do. We'll go from there.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Amanda. Just say thank you so much for allowing us to speak today. This means a lot. Our mission at OKCU is to help Oklahomans do more with their money. We care about the unique needs of every single Oklahoman, including our youth. Our commitment is to make it easy to helping our individuals. So this looks like securing their first savings checking account, teaching them how to save goals. I mean, that's still an everyday struggle for a lot of us. Encourage them to save for those important things, getting their first car, getting their first apartment, just having a little safety net for all of them. Celebrate them when they hit these marks, because those are amazing marks to hit, that they are able to do these things. And prepare for, to help them prepare for their future, to go to college, to go to VOTEC, to start thinking about what they want to do. Which is all could also include their first car, first credit card, even their first house. Today we've opened over 50 accounts for our youth. We even helped a youth get their first auto loan, which is amazing. We just had one of our first events at Bridges of Norman, where we were able to speak to about 20 children, or 20 youth, and give a little presentation. And they blew us all away with the questions that they've asked. Like, I didn't even know that they would ask that many questions. So that's so exciting that they are in their head thinking about all these important things and have the questions and even the guts to ask those questions, because at that age, I wasn't asking these questions. We had 10 youth sign up and are continuing to see them flow in. From all of this, we've also secured a grant that's helped us build out PowerPoint, and we're going to do workshops with the youth on budgeting, just talking about your finances, to go into your credit scores and stuff like that. So it's just hands-on workshops for them so they can get all this knowledge. With that, we've also been able to get some swag items. And today I brought a little notebook that we have today, and just for the youth to take with. We're getting water bottles. We're getting more stuff with this grant that's made us help us be able to do these things. All right, and now I'm going to go into the presentation. Okay, cool. All right, ways to open an account. We have a QR code located on a lot of our flyers. An appointment over the phone, which this is one way we really want to connect with the kids, is doing appointments so we can speak with them and start to learn their goals and what they want to save for. And then we have in person, that they can come into our branch and able to visit us. Process to open an account, all the following. So we're going to need legal name, date of birth, social security card, phone number, address, which we can utilize where they're at, their shelter, their community homes, and an email address. And we are able to help them establish this. But as we've seen at Bridges of Norman, all of them had emails, so we were good to go on that area. And then one of the following: a state ID, a birth certificate, a social security card, a school ID, or we've created an OKCU letter of ID, which I'll show later in our presentation, which is just a form to help them basically know that it's them. And this is what this form looks like. And we just have them fill it out. We'll have one of their case managers sign at the bottom. And so they're able to have this account for themselves. Nobody else is gonna be on this account. It's solely for them, so they are not, their money's staying with them. And our account features, no monthly fees, no minimum balances. We have a great online banking app that is fabulous for them because they are tech savvy kids and they are able to access it. And that also helps them and helps us when we're going all around the state and our branches, are more in the city, but we have a great mobile app. Plus we have our co-ops where they're allowed to go into other branches that work with the credit unions and establish their business. But we all know they're probably gonna use this app more than anything. And then individual certified financial counseling. One of the awesome things that I think we offer is this, and it'll be a lady named V who helps them open their accounts, but also is their financial counselor. They're not being shuffled around. We're gonna have one person for them. And she's gonna start and talk with them, setting their goals. What do they wanna save for? They're trying to get that car. They're trying to get an apartment. So we're pretty excited about that. And then this is V. She is their point of contact. She'll be opening accounts, like I said, and just, she's a wonderful person, connects with them, texts, because we all know they text, they don't always call, and we're making a safety net for them. And so that's it right now. I just want to say thank you so much for letting us be able to present. Every time that we're able to present, we get a little boost in accounts flowing because y'all are getting the word out for us. We're trying to build all these relationships and start getting these youth accounts. Any questions?
How do you all?
When you say youth, is there an age limit on the upper end as far as what clients you can serve?
So we're doing the unhoused and the youth that are transitioning. So we're looking from about 14, and we are going into the youth that are aging out of the DHS and all that stuff. So that would be up to about 24 to 22, 24. So, because we know that they also need help with this as well.
So 22, 24?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if they don't have their social, I mean, I know you guys have the separate verification that you all use, but how do you help them get that information if they don't have it?
That would be,
It would be in the system somewhere.
yes.
We don't have to have the card.
Yeah, so
We
the,
just have to have the number.
yeah, so we just have to have their number.
Not the card, okay.
Yeah, and a lot of them, we did see at the Bridges of Norman, a lot of them knew that number, so that was awesome to see too. I did not know that number at 16,
And then
so.
is part of the training that you all give around like financial security as well, like changing PIN numbers and making sure their accounts are secure?
Yeah, and I apologize, I didn't cover that. That was another big thing, is talking about security with the kids and saying, don't share your passwords, keep it secure to you, do not let anyone see it, and just kind of giving, and that will be one of the workshops we build out, is more of that security, because we know that a lot of that stuff's being tampered with today.
So in my day job, I work in personal finance with folks. And I just want to say, I think this is wonderful.
Thank
I mean, the data suggests that financial habits that we establish at this age really persist. So the fact that they have a counselor to work with is awesome. I was curious, do you guys cover things like car insurance as part of that education process? Because a lot of times, especially for younger drivers, that can be the difference between kind of a financial calamity or being properly insured.
Well, we have not discussed that yet.
We do. When we have our financial counselor, so when we get to that, that's kind of a futuristic thing to discuss with the youth. But when they've already met, they're, hey, I have an account. I know how to manage it. I know how to balance it. I have some goals set in place. Now we look at the car, right? So now we're looking at that first car. We do have a product for that. But that financial counselor, Miss V, Vanessa, always talks with, okay, so here's your car payment. With that comes, you know, you're gonna be required to handle insurance, have insurance, so let's look at that. So that's part of that financial counseling and education. She is certified. So that is something that actually, we probably need to do that with everyone, but yes, with the youth, just to, that's part of that payment that sometimes we don't take into consideration. So yes, that is something that she covers.
Very good.
I just wanted to say, because I don't know, you said it while I stepped out, and I apologize, but just want to give kudos to the credit union, because I'm not sure they told you that they are putting the first $5 in the account. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, and
They're
again, yeah, so.
opening the account for the kids. So if they don't have a spare dime, the credit union is opening it for them with $5 of their own money. And it may not sound like a lot, but I think it's huge. And I've never experienced, I am a member of the credit union for full disclosure. I think they're outstanding. They have offices, branches all over. So it's not just something here for Oklahoma City folks. And I'm just gonna say, I think the personal touch and the commitment that you have given is extraordinary, and we should really applaud you. I think it's just an outstanding partnership, and you didn't toot your own horn enough. So let me do that a little bit for you. So kudos to the credit union and all the stuff that you've done beyond what our ask was. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
And to go with the savings account, we are also waiving the $25 fee for the checking account as well. So they are able to just do it on the spot, set up that appointment, start building that relationship and setting their goals.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you so much for being with us
Thank you guys so
today.
much. We really appreciate this.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is agenda item number 7, discussion and possible vote to adopt the Oklahoma Commission on Children and Youth rule changes. And I will turn this over to Marcia Johnson.
Do we have I think we had a handout. Where did he go? We can address it when we come to it. I do want to echo what Annette just said about the credit union. I can't say enough good things about that partnership with them. It's been amazing. So good morning. I just want to give a little background on how we got to where we are with the rules that we've drafted and that have been proposed. At the last commission meeting on November 22nd, you voted to authorize staff to draft changes to that code that governs the freestanding multidisciplinary teams. And you do have a copy of those proposed rules in your packet. On November 25th, I submitted our draft rule changes to the Office of the Administrative Rules in the Secretary of State's office. And included in that submission is a notice of rulemaking intent, or an NRI. The NRI included a summary of the proposed rules, a notice that written comments would be accepted from December 16th to January 15th, and a notice that a public hearing on those rules would be held on January 17th. The NRI was published in the Oklahoma Register on December 16th. The proposed rules provide procedures for annual reviews and site visits of the freestanding teams that incorporate the use of peer reviews to assist in determining the functioning of the teams and to strengthen data collection system. Few individuals representing child advocacy centers signed up to make comments at the hearing. And Mark is passing out the notes that we made from that hearing, as well as an email, a written comment that we received later. As you can see, concerns expressed in the email relate to the use of the peer review process, and concerns that using the peer review process would compromise the quality of the review processes itself. And our response is that the proposed rule states that the MDT coordinators will be provided training and tools, which will include standard and standardized evaluation forms for their use. Second concern that was expressed is that the data collection requirements are vague. Our response is that the proposed rules describe the data to be collected. And examples of the data points include the child's name, date of birth, school setting, living situation, the KK number, the child welfare case number, the type of alleged abuse, the alleged perpetrator's relationship to the victim, circumstances surrounding the abuse, previous abuse or maltreatment allegations, if any, against the alleged perpetrator, whether the case resulted in an adjudication of the child as being deprived, whether the case resulted in an arrest or a conviction, and if so, what sentence, if any, was imposed. And finally, the database, they will enter information on the referrals of the child and the family to community services like mental health services. No addresses, social security numbers, or the name of any adult is going to be collected and input into that system. The third concern that was expressed dealt with the privacy and ethical use of sensitive information. And our response is that the rules are very clear, that confidential information shall be protected pursuant to statute. One concern that it was expressed was that a tribal partner had refused to allow an MDT to share identifiable information. And our response to that is that mission staff has not heard directly from one of the tribes or an MDT about this issue. The last concern is that there is a growing hesitancy by district attorneys to support the freestanding teams. They also, this was shared with us firsthand. They also expressed concerns about the use of the database and the peer review process. And our response, again, is that no district attorney or assistant district attorney has communicated their concerns to commission staff. Additionally, in the last 12 months, 3 new teams were formed with letters of support from district attorneys. And just this year, 2 communities have inquired about forming MDTs, which again can only be done if supported by the DA. As I mentioned earlier, the written comment period was to close on January 15th. After we became aware that not all interested parties were aware of the comment period that was specified in the NRI, we extended it to January 15th, closing at 5:00 p.m. The only written comment we received was from an individual representing the Child Advocacy Center, and that was received at close of business on the 22nd. Her email is attached to the handout that was provided. The email relayed concerns that the database violates confidentiality of children and families, OCCY statute, and OCCY policy, and state statutes. And the author referenced a part of the existing rule, which you can find on page 3 of the rules that are in your packet. It reads, team records are required to establish the level of functioning of an MDT. They are considered public records and shall be open and available for public inspection. You'll note if you turn to page 3 of the draft rules, we're not changing any of that. You'll note that it clearly exempts confidential information, and it is not in violation of the provisions of Title 10A dealing with the confidentiality of information. What the rule is referring to is the information collected by OCCY staff to determine the functionality of the teams. That information is an open record and is in fact shared annually with you, the commission, for your review and final approval of the list of functioning teams. And that concludes my background summary of how we got where we are.
Thank you so much. What questions do we have?
I just have a kind of just a general question. Maybe this is for Sandra. Does that agenda item adequately give the public notice of what we're actually going to consider?
I believe it does. And it informs the public that they're going to consider adopting rules. Changes. You may be used to seeing also something like
Specific rules, yeah.
more formal language than that, but I think that's adequate to inform the public
Okay.
that you are going to consider rule changes. And specifically what the rule changes are for, since you've got an exhibit that actually is the proposed changes, not just discussion.
Did we make any changes based on the comments that were received?
No.
Have we, based on the comment about the tribal partners, have we contacted any of our tribal partners to get their input after that issue was raised?
No.
Do we even, I mean, would that be normal for us to do?
I guess we could have contacted. I'm not sure how.
There may not be a
Yeah, I'm not-
point of contact. I just,
Yeah, so each MDT gets to make up their own composite, right? And so I guess we could have reached out to each MDT and asked if they had a partner on there who had expressed concern, but we've never received any concern from a tribal partner or an MDT saying that it was an issue for them within their MDT.
It's ultimately up to the commission members to decide whether to approve these rules.
I understand.
And if you have concerns, then yeah, now's the time to raise them. And if you don't like the changes, then you vote no.
I will say, I'm always a little concerned going through a lot of rulemaking and being beat up by the legislature, quite frankly, for the process we go through and how we engage our stakeholders. I have some concerns when we say, well, we've never heard from them that it's a problem. It seems to me if we have a comment during a comment period or your hearing that somebody says it is a problem for this group, it seems to me like that should trigger an interaction with that organization, with that group, to try to track that down instead of just assuming that, you know, well, somebody's saying it, but it's not really true because we haven't heard from anybody on it. And I know from my standpoint, I've say that from the experience of being kind of raked over the coals for not adequately engaging with our stakeholders when it comes to rule changes.
I would like to just interject this. My understanding that the MDTs have been aware of the evolution of these rules, and it's been over a year, I believe, in the process. So the members of the teams have been aware, and we haven't received any comments from them.
Other questions or discussion?
So I mean, DA Hicks put you on the spot. There's a couple of notes in here on concern from DA's offices. Is there anything you do want to speak to, or I'm curious your thoughts?
What I will say about this is I've talked to the director of the District Attorney's Council. She is not aware of anybody that has problems. I have been on this commission now for 3 years. I'm not aware of any problems that none of them have been expressed to me. None of them have been expressed to Catherine. There was one situation a couple of months ago, and Annette may be able to speak better to it than I can, and I think it all ties into this and is all kind of coming from the same place. But as far as I go, no, it's not been expressed. I'm not aware that it's been on any agendas at DAC, ODA, or anything else. So if there's somebody that is complaining, it has not made it very far.
Ask a clarification question within the rules. When it talks about that these freestanding multidisciplinary child abuse teams by conducting annual reviews to ensure compliance of freestanding multidisciplinary child abuse teams with minimal standards. What are the minimal standards? Well, how are those defined? Because I didn't see that in the rules anywhere.
So those are in rules, and maybe not in this set of that we provided for you today, but they are rules. It's standards that have been created over the years that they have to meet in order to be deemed functioning. So they have to have certain disciplines. They have to meet so many times. There's a whole set of qualifications. most of them are very objective. There's not a lot of subjectivity to it. So teams can do above and beyond, but these are the things they have to do at the bare minimum in order to receive a functioning status and receive their money.
Can you walk me through because on that first page, we have the annual site reviews, but now we're changing those to annual reviews and then adding an annual site visit.
So that's.
So what are the difference in the two?
So I think what we're talking about, there is a site visit that every team gets. And what we're hoping for is that because there are 40 teams now and there's one kind of person that runs all of this. And then there's also a training coordinator that we'd like to adopt the practice, much like I think a lot of the field does, where 1 year you would have a staff person come out to provide that site visit, give guidance or feedback and complete the tool that is used for the functioning. And then another year, you would have teams that would be paired up. And there's a lot of beauty in peer review. I think a lot of systems use it because you become, knowledgeable about maybe how another team does something while you're actually out there going through the tool and checking things off. And it's kind of two-way learning. And of course, everyone have a standardized tool. A lot of this is objective, it's not subjective. And there will be some subjectivity, but most of it's objective. And they may develop a relationship so that they can actually do some casual, networking and support of each other. So that was to lessen the burden on the one person we have. So 1 year, a staff person would go out, the next year that same team would probably have a peer review. So you get that site visit, which then feeds into your annual review, which is also paper and pencil. And that's what's presented to you guys every year in the final list. So people they'll have an in-person visit either by staff or a peer, and then they will also have their form and all of the documents reviewed to assure that they have everything in place to receive their funding for the future year.
So I'm going to ask a question, and I apologize to the group because this was probably discussed back in November, but I need a refresher, something that remind me again, what is the problem we're solving with this?
One person, it's hard to go out to do the site visits for 40 and do all the other stuff that's required for the job. So this would allow them to do half the visits because the peers would do the other half. So there's that one. And then is there another section to that you're questioning?
The data system.
Oh, so we've developed this data system. I'm not sure that it's a problem we're trying to solve other than to provide assurances because we want folks to understand what we're entering. Because I think there are some folks who question whether we should have a name in the database. And because we have not had a database for MDTs in the past. They were doing things by paper and pencil and then counting in aggregate and sending us information. And it's just an unbelievably antiquated way for us to do any kind of oversight. We can't track, clean, or do analysis with it because I don't know if their one check mark is, I'm not saying anyone ever screw up or want to mislead us, but I have no way to verify. This way we'll be able to, for those of you who've ever done data cleaning or want to do data matches, kind of ideally you want 3 data points, a name, a birthday, social security, something, right? And if you can get 2 out of 3, then you can start doing matches. If you get 3 out of 3, great. So we're looking at name, birthday, and KK number if available. Some of these teams do reviews before there is an assigned KK number. And then, for example, it is not uncommon to have 3 Kelly Smiths with a birthday all a day apart. Now, it could be a really great coincidence that there are Kelly Smiths with birthdays apart, or it could be the same person who's been entered by accident and there's a typo. In addition, it would allow us to know if Kelly Smith has a case in Caddo County, also has a case in McIntosh and in Harmon. And right now, no one will know that. Or in the past, no one would know that. The team just sees what's in front of them. This would allow us on occasion to be able to say, how many of these kids have active cases or have had cases that have been reviewed by MTTs. This is knowledge that would be super helpful to a team doing a review. So that's why we need a name. And so for folks who are concerned about that, we want to assure them that we take confidentiality really seriously. So we just try to put language in there that really said, it's for this purpose. Please know we have sensitive data in our agency already. We do not abuse that right, but we do need to be able to do quality assurance, data cleaning, and to be able to assist if we see kind of, I would say, if we see families that are in multiple counties and that information could be useful, that is something that, you know, we may need to see. It may not really happen very often, but frankly, we've never had the ability to know, and now we will.
Super excited about the database.
I was gonna ask Jackie.
It's like, yeah, counting by hand and it's kind of crazy in this day and age.
I'm sad it took us so long to get into the 21st century, but it's been so unbelievably needed. And all we want to do is to beef up the language, because currently the language in statute and in rules basically says something like the teams will give us data as we prescribe. So we just wanted to make it sound solid, like people can feel confident that when they put something in there that that information is locked.
And that would be necessary to be put in rule for us to be able to do that.
Necessary, no, but we thought it would be a good assurance.
A couple of questions. Do we have the database already selected? Do we know what it is? Has
We
that been,
built
I know
it.
you said it'll be approved by the state CIO, but I'm just curious.
It's
if that's
already
all.
been approved by the state CIO, and it is being utilized. The legislature's been along with this, just to get the right to even move forward between legal, Ms. Balzer, OMES Legal, and all their IT folks in OU. It was a year just to get it like started, just to build.
And then I apologize if this was mentioned earlier, but how are the peer review teams selected? Who's actually on those?
So the idea would be the MDT coordinators that are in place that year, you would probably want to match like sized communities together, and then it would be a scramble. It would be random. So they would go through training. If someone says, we don't have the time, don't have the ability, but we would like to lessen the burden as much as we can. I mean.
Like, what are the qualifications we're looking for?
MDT coordinator. So they'd be one coordinator working and reviewing another coordinator's work.
Ellen, I may be misunderstanding. Are you determining like the team? So how's that team picked in that local county? Just in our experience, so you have your coordinator, but then you also have your district attorney. So the goal is that your district attorney leads that. Your agencies are appointed, but there can also be community members. So like for our community, we know that we need certain people in that room. And so though you can only be invited, and then there has to be the 5 disciplines. And tell me if I'm wrong, there's a medical, mental health, DHS,
DA's office.
and then law enforcement. Is that the 5th one?
That's it.
Yeah. And so those are your core team members that have to be on your documents, but the entire team is able to vote on items. But if you make any changes to the core members or your.
And they have the ability as a team, they get to choose their coordinator. So sometimes it's a staff member in the DA's office. Sometimes it's someone at the DHS office. It kind of varies from team to team. And then a lot of them will use some of the money that they get, and they'll contract with that person to pay for their time to do that pulling together of documents and entering data. So it varies from place to place.
Another question just on the database, on that second page, number 4, it says that OCCY staff and contractors supporting the development, maintenance, and improvement will have secured access to the database. But who all will that include?
It's OU, OMES if they had to, and then the program manager of the program.
I guess my concern with that is, at least in our agency, we're seeing more and more other state agencies and other outside partners wanting access to our data where they don't have any need or right to the data. And so I just want to make sure that we're being really mindful
Oh,
on
no, we're trying to
who
do
all
just that.
has. No, I understand. I just want
yeah.
to make sure that.
Yeah.
And we've even had OMS request access for people that really don't need it. And we push back like, oh, yeah, hey, you're right. And so I just want to make sure that the day-to-day work that you all are doing are very mindful of.
Thank you.
No one should have access to
right.
this data unless they truly need it, not just because they're curious and want to see it.
Absolutely agree. And that's why we were trying to write that. So if it doesn't convey that, then,
No, it does. I just want to make
okay,
sure.
all right, that was our
as a
purpose.
commissioner,
Thank you. That was our purpose.
just know that if the rules go forward and they're approved by the legislature and the governor, that like my expectation is basically no one other than a very few people have access to the data. And if another agency or partner says they need it and you're uncomfortable, like don't
We won't.
hesitate to
No, we
come
won't.
back to us.
We ask for a court order. If you want our data, we will ask you to go get a court order. I can't think of, I may be wrong, but I can't think of a time where we have released any identifiable, Mark, help me, since I've been here, in any department without a court order. And I can't think of a court order that we've received. Am I wrong? And that would be for any department, including this one.
And then is the data going to be housed here or is it going to be housed at?
It's housed at
OES?
OU.
At OU, okay.
Yes. And that was one thing that was worked out between IT at OU or at OMES, as Balzer, and then OU's IT security. So the OUE team, if you're familiar with them, they do a lot of work for a lot of different agencies. I know they're really, they're very involved in a lot of DMH work. But the reason we went with them is because they're not simply builders of a database, but they also are very involved in evaluation capability and social service in particular evaluation. And since we don't have a programmatic evaluation department, our thinking was from time to time, if we had the money, they could help us with different analysis or reports, because we frankly don't have the capacity to do that all the time. So that has been a very inexpensive way for us to get additional help in not just database, but also in the evaluation. So they've been very instrumental in giving us ideas about this is what the field is looking at for different tables or different trends. So you might want to consider doing X. So it was very useful. They weren't just technically great at a database. They actually gave us great guidance.
And if it's housed at OU, will they pay the cost of the maintenance of the database, or will that be on the commission?
We received money last year, $50,000 a year for that maintenance.
And PAR made this transition. Post adjudication review boards were all pen and paper, and we made a transition to databases 2 years ago. Keith isn't here. But it's been wonderful for the coordinator. So it's the exact same thing. It was all pen and paper, and now they have a database. They can upload, they can aggregate the data. OUE team does that as well. I assume this database is very similar to the PAR.
It's very.
And you said we have the authority in statute to prescribe how the data comes to us, right? Is that what you said earlier?
The original sentence in the statute, I think that's about all it said. I mean, it was a very simple.
I think hopefully one last question on the site reviews, and maybe this is the question. Are we confident that statutorily that's a function that we can delegate? Because that's essentially what we're doing, right? If we're gonna do maybe half of them from a commission, staff person, and half by these peer review multidisciplinary teams, is that something we could specifically delegate?
Well, depends on what you mean by delegate. I mean, it seems like that they're putting in the rule that that's going to be our process. So the peer reviewers would be operating based on training that they're provided by OCCY on how to do training. It seems like it's just a way to save money of having to hire enough people to go out and do the
But in
review.
statute, so there's gotta be in the statute some sort of statement that authorizes the commission to conduct the site reviews in the first place, right? Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be able to have this in rule. And so I'm curious if that allows that function to be delegated.
I wish I had it.
I don't think I don't know
It's very
how
broad.
Yeah, I don't know how.
It's very broad and vague.
let me,
Do you have the statute?
I will go
Maybe we
get
could
it.
look
I'll
at
go get it. Someone,
No, I don't have it.
do you have your notebook or my notebook? Go grab my notebook. So there's an annual review process in the statute. I'm not sure that it says like, I'm not sure. I think there's more detail in the rules than there is in the statute.
And it authorizes you to promulgate rules as needed, to
Right.
expand on what's in the statute.
And we wanted to do peer review before, and then we realized the rules didn't allow us to do that, so we held off. And that's why we wanted to change the rules.
Yeah,
So I'm
you know,
thinking-
going back to Keith's point about once this starts going through the legislative reviews and that process, I just really want us to be confident that the
Sure, no.
statute
Yeah.
allows us to delegate.
Operating within our authority
Right.
by statute, because that's something, even retrospectively in our agency, that we've reviewed a lot of rules that we recognize that we may have been outside our scope and our authority, even though it was good practice, it was common sense, it was for the good, but it didn't necessarily align with the statutory authority. So we've made it, that's probably been the majority of our rule changes, been cleaning things like that up. And that would lead me to the question of what was the process for the legal review on this to compare it to the statutory authority?
I don't think that there was like an in-depth legal review of it. I mean, we've written, sorry. So the statement is freestanding teams shall be approved by the commission. The commission shall conduct an annual review of freestanding teams to ensure that the teams are functioning effectively. Teams not meeting the minimal standards as in the rules shall be removed from the list.
Does that talk about the site reviews? That's the piece I'm concerned about, is delegating the site reviews.
No.
Is there a section that authorizes the commission to do the site reviews?
That's all in rule. There's nothing in the statute. The rest is all about money.
General language that says shall oversee 7 teams.
No. No. Most of it's about money.
Can I ask a different but somewhat maybe related question? Just because I'm still trying to understand all of this. The relationship between OCCY and the Child Abuse Training and Coordination Council.
That's a great question. So to go back on a little history lesson, when I was at the health department and the freestanding multidisciplinary teams were at the health department, CATSI was also at the health department. And then in 2015, I believe, it was moved here to OCCY.
The freestanding.
The freestanding teams, and apparently unbeknownst to me, also CATSI. But I was told when I was at the health department, CATSI was eliminated. But I never, I didn't do that work anymore, so I never looked at it again. So then I come here and the teams are here and they're operating however they had been operating when I came. And there was no CATSI and there was no involvement of anything like that in the process. And I just assumed it was because the statute was gone. Never looked at it. It's still in Title 63 Public Health Code. It's not in OCCY. And sometime last year, I don't even remember what it was, something caused us to look at something. And I saw the CATSI, that CATSI is there and OCCY was inserted for OSDH. And that was
Still
the,
at 63.
I think they've moved it to Title, I can't remember. They may have moved it to 10, but it wasn't anything I ever look at. So I was like stunned. It was the first I knew and I'd been here for years. So that's when we came to you and said, we're gonna start resurrecting that. And we tried to have a meeting, I think in November, and it got canceled because of ICE. And anyway, there's scheduled meetings now for the Secretary of State, I believe, but that was the first I knew that it still existed. So when I was at the health department, CATSI was very involved in the reviews. So they did the paper part of the reviews and CATSI was very active. So staff would go out and we had more staff at the health department than we do here at OCCY. Would do the reviews and then at the end of like the year, CATSI would gather and all the teams would have submitted these all their documents. And it was, anyone who, were you around the big packets?
Pat.
Yes, Pat Dameron, and they would go through for a day or more and they would score, they would break off into teams and they would score all of these. And then they would present, they would come up with a list along with the site visit information. And then that was what was presented to OCCY. And that is not what has been occurring because we didn't know it existed. So we need to go back into that kind of a process. But yes, so that was new to us. And if you look at the CATSI language, part of their role is supposed to be looking at training for the child protective system, child welfare, kind of child well-being system, and to make reports and recommendations, prepare and issue a model protocol for multidisciplinary teams regarding investigation and prosecution, review their protocols that they submit to us at the annual review, but we didn't even know they existed. So, and I don't think all of the appointments have been made for CATSI. There's some groups that we're still waiting, but we do have a quorum of them now, so we can meet at least.
So I want to make sure I heard you right earlier. We don't necessarily feel like this rule is required for us to move forward with the system, the data system. Is that correct? Or you just have concerns with compliance, trying to force compliance?
It's a really great question. I think it is helpful to have because I do think it lets teams know how important it is, both for confidentiality and its use. But we're using it now because we've been working on this and statute's super vague right now, and I think it's a much better system than what we had of paper and pencil.
So this is back on my question, sorry. So is the end goal that the commission will review everything? It's just we're delegating like the on-site visit out to peer reviews?
And when you say commission, you mean the agency, right?
Yeah, because the
Okay,
statute
yeah.
says the commission shall conduct an annual review of freestanding multidisciplinary teams to ensure that the teams are functioning effectively.
So annual review, we will always do.
Right, that's my question.
Annual site visit, we would do every other year, and peer review, that would be what we would prefer. Otherwise, one person's going out almost once a week and trying to do everything else, and it's just a lot.
Yeah, and I'm like Keith, I completely understand the intent and all that. I'm not saying
But we
the
are not.
intent isn't good. I just
Yeah.
want to be sure we're completely aligned with the statute.
And I totally hear you. And I also, so I think your original question was a good one on the difference between annual site visit and annual review. Everyone's gonna have a review through a process, from the commission all the way up to you. I think the question is on the site visit where you get technical assistance and some, check marks on your tool about how they, are the appropriate people there? Did everyone sign the confidentiality statement this year? Do you have your joint protocol handy? Did everyone speak at the table? That's what we would like to do half and half. It will also, any peer review thing would also, that documentation would come here. It wouldn't just be unchecked.
But at the end of the day, the commission is doing an annual review. Even if
Correct.
it's not the on-site.
Correct.
Is there a way that maybe just for future reference that we could get this with a little bit more notice?
Yes, but the writing period just ended, like, I don't know, this week? Is that correct? I mean, like,
We got it yesterday.
yeah, we've been scrambling.
And the comments.
Yes.
Is there any reason we couldn't get those in the head? It just helps provide context of what the concern of
Right,
the
right,
impact
right.
the stakeholders are, so it provides a lot of context to look at the rule change.
I hear you.
And I think I would echo that request from Commissioner Reed as well. I mean, I understand that there's timelines and we've got 30, everything's due February 1st because we changed the statute. But I mean, I had to approve all this stuff at DHS in September. And so part of this is a little bit, I think, self-induced on our own. And I think, the more notice that we can get to look at these things, to review these comments, because had I known there was hesitation allegedly from DA's offices, I feel bad that DA Hicks kind of has to get put on the spot and be the voice for DAs. I mean, I would have made phone calls to other folks to get more input. So the more time in the future that we have as commissioners to get that input, I think would be helpful.
Sure, understood.
What happens if the rules don't go?
I do not know.
Because it sounds like we're operating the database today.
Right, I guess the only part that won't happen is we won't be able to do the peer review part.
Any other questions, comments?
I'm sorry, I know I'm harping on this, I'm just kind of skittish from my own experience with rules and making sure we're line feet into the statute. So I think I'm good on the annual review piece. Are we confident from a statutory perspective that we're able to create these peer review groups? I mean, it sounds like as long as the commission is reviewing, it doesn't look like there needs to be a specific on-site visit by the commission, but are we allowed to create a peer review group?
I guess I didn't think that there was a prohibition, so I just never thought of it from the other perspective. To us, it was a way to accomplish something without undue stress on staff.
There's if there are 5 people interpreting statutes, there could be 5 different interpretations of what the statute means.
So it's your position as our council that we're in line with the statute if we approve this?
I think that the statute is broad and vague enough that it would encompass a lot of things. Now, whether or not the legislature who has to approve the rules or the governor agrees with that is a different story. It's a common problem. People have different understandings of what words mean.
And I think our rule changes were trying to provide more detail to what is not in statute.
And that's the purpose of rules, is to expand on a general direction set by statute.
Including language around.
And that is also why
confidentiality.
legislators get to approve rules too, because if they decide they don't meet with what the statutes are that they pass, then they don't approve the rules.
Have we had any of those initial conversations with folks on the admin rules committee?
No, we have
Or
not.
in the HHS committees or anything?
To be honest, I think since I've been here, maybe we've had one other experience with, maybe 2 with rule changes, and we've just never had any problems or issues, but perhaps it's because our rules are generally not very complicated and we've never had to, I was gonna say advocate for them much. It's just kind of like a process and they were changed.
There is a I guess I could say a renewed focus by the legislature on rules and rulemaking. I can tell you straight up, we've experienced it. And they are really watching very closely for things like statutory authority, engagement of stakeholders, following the timeline, all that. They're really tightening up that process a lot.
If I could interject, what we've done in the past is if the commission votes to adopt the rules, then that's when I reach out to Chairman Kendrick of the Rules Committee and, go over the purpose of it. So generally wait until they're official, at least from the commission standpoint.
These have to be voted on today. Is there a timeline that has to be done at this meeting?
Well, our next meeting's April, unless we have a special, and which we can have a special,
That
but.
has to be submitted by February 1.
So there's a problem.
And then you have to have them published prior to submitting them, so you can have the comment period, but you've already done that part, so, yeah.
Judge?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the elephant in the room, House Bill 1581. And I'm thinking that if we don't tweak our rules, there's a push for House Bill 1581 to take over some of the duties and leave us behind. Is that a fair statement?
I think they take over all duties, not, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not familiar with that House bill.
It's a House bill that is pushed by or being presented by Representative Lawson. And I believe it is the push behind it is maybe Carrie Little to make some rule changes that would divest this committee, this agency, whatever you want to call us, from doing some of the duties that we do now. Is that fair?
There is House Bill 1581, which would remove the multidisciplinary team function and place it with the Child Advocacy Centers of Oklahoma, which is the Association of Child Advocacy Centers. That's correct. Which was introduced I think we learned about it at the end of last week.
Thoughts or concerns, questions regarding the rule changes do we have?
Can I ask just real quick, the definitions that were changed in annual site review to annual site visit, under what is in place now, annual site review, and it talks about what that is, who's actually performing that site review? Is that OCCY or members here?
It is a staff person currently, one person, and then for the site visit, we were wanting to be able to do half that staff person and half peer-to-peer.
So then statute gives us the authority, and maybe this is a question for the AG's office. Statute gives us authority to make these rules, correct? And we're going in, I'm not aware or familiar with the statute that says you have to do the site reviews with respect to the MDTs that we're talking about here. So if we've been given the authority to make the rules, we're just kind of tweaking this a little bit to give us a little more flexibility. Is that fair?
Correct.
And it's the AG's office, it's the opinion of the AG's office that we're in compliance with statutes and everything else. And this isn't going to necessarily cause us a problem down the road, right?
Well, you don't have a formal AG opinion, you could certainly request one.
Yeah, that'll take a while though, right?
Yeah, you just have.
Certainly not gonna
Basically, you
get
just
it
have
by
my
February
opinion.
1.
No, we're not gonna get about February 1.
Okay. And I just look at it, it doesn't look like we're changing the definition of annual site review a whole lot, just giving us a little more
No,
flexibility.
just the person who would conduct it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or thoughts? Would anyone like to make a motion on this agenda item?
I'll move that we make a change as recommended.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Maybe this is a question for council. Would it be appropriate? So I'll just be completely transparent. I still have just some concerns, not necessarily because I don't understand the intent and not because this isn't a good thing. And so I hesitate to vote no for that reason. But I just still have, just from a legal perspective, still some concerns about the statutory authorization on delegating this function. And then especially in light of the fact that there's a legislative action to move this particular function to begin with, and we haven't spoken with any of them. Would it be appropriate for members that have those types of concerns to abstain from a vote?
You can always abstain if you don't believe you have enough information to say yes or no.
Any other comments or further discussion? Okay, hearing none, please call vote.
Commissioner Aaron,
Yes.
CEO Bittner,
Abstain.
Director Cartmel,
I'm gonna abstain.
Commissioner Hall,
Yes.
District Attorney Hicks,
Yes.
Commissioner Kurt,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Abstain.
Commissioner Schneider,
Yes.
Judge Warren,
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 8, presentation on our legislative update. Turn it back over to Marcia Johnson.
So I'll be really brief. As most of you probably know, there were over 3,000 bills introduced last Thursday. And so I haven't quite finished my tracking list, but I did want to follow up on the legislative concepts that you approved at the last commission meeting as well. One of those is House Bill 1574, also by Representative Lawson and Senator Stanley. And this bill is the one that restores authority to the Office of Juvenile System Oversight to inspect privately operated children's facilities that receive state or federal funding. The other concept was it's a cleanup bill, and it is House Bill 2892 by Representative Townley. I haven't gotten confirmation on a Senate author yet, but several years ago, the executive director of OCCY was given the authority to request OSBI look into a case. So that authority is in Title 10, and I think it was just a mistake that corresponding language was not added to the OSBI statutes in Title 74. So that's all this bill does, is it just adds that corresponding language. And I worked with the general counsel at OSBI, and they're supportive of that.
What was the bill number on that one?
2892. The third bill is House Bill 1863, and this is related to the rules that you all just considered. Representative Roberts and Senator Rader are the authors. This bill clarifies the responsibilities of the multidisciplinary teams, and in statute, it requires the use of a secure database for entering case information. Fourth issue that we talked about was last year there was a bill that was enacted that required if a school employee was going to communicate with a student on an unofficial platform or a non-approved platform, they had to include the parent or guardian. And it was brought to our attention late in the fall that, you know, from a homeless, McKinney-Vento homeless liaison, what do we do with students who are unaccompanied homeless youth? And so it was my understanding when I went looking for a Senate author that Senator Pugh, who was the original author of last year's bill, he was going to introduce a cleanup bill and that we would just work with him to try to get our concerns addressed. And so that's kind of the direction I'm going. Representative Stark did introduce a bill because I had talked to her about it. And even though I told her I couldn't really find a Senate author, she went ahead and introduced it, but it's not in her top 8, so she's not going to pursue it. So we'll just keep looking for a vehicle if Senator Pugh, I reviewed his introduced bills. I couldn't really identify one that would be specific to this section of statute. So I need to follow up with his office, and then we need to look if there may have been other members that filed something. So, but we don't have a specific bill for that. And then, as was mentioned, House Bill 1581 is the bill that moves the MDTs out of OCCY to the Child Advocacy Centers of Oklahoma entity. So the funding appropriated by the legislature that goes to DHS now, pass through DHS and would go to CAECO for their distribution to child advocacy centers and the teams. There's other bills, but I'm in the name of time management. I think I'll just step. Yes, and then I'm sorry.
I think there's one that we should bring to your attention, and I can't remember who the author is, if it's House or Senate, but there is a bill. It's Senator Prieto
Senate Bill 440.
to redo the makeup of OCCY commissioners, and it would be 3 governor appointees, 3 House appointees, and 3 Senate pro tem. So just wanted to bring that to your attention too.
And there is one more that I'll say because it's generated some concern, and it was run last year, Senate Bill 30 by Senator Hamilton. It exempts family child care homes that operate under 30 or fewer hours a week, exempts them from the provisions of the Child Care Licensing Act.
Oh, question, just the one from Senator Rader, and forgive me, I didn't write down the number, but the one that you said was related to what we just passed on the rules, was that going to provide clarity in the governing statute for those rules?
It's going to place language related to the database in the statute. Is that what you asked?
Yeah. Is there a chance that it would require additional rulemaking? Okay. And that was not our request bill. That was our request bill.
That was a request bill.
Okay.
On the bill that would make the changes to the MDT that you discussed, have we visited with the author? I mean, what's the rationale for that? Is it a concern about a conflict or?
You mean Representative Lawson's bill?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I did visit with him before we actually had the language. And my understanding is that he was approached by the lobbyist for CAECO to run the bill. And when I talked to him, like I said, we didn't have specific language, but I had a very frank conversation with him. I have a good relationship with him, worked with him. So he's aware that there is some concern on the part of staff, but I haven't had a follow-up with him yet.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? Marcia? All right, thank you so much. Okay, next on the agenda is agenda item number 9, presentation on the resolution of celebrating the legacy of Dr. Grisham and his exemplary work. So just want to take this time to recognize the work that he did for children and youth in our state. It was truly outstanding, and I want to let Mark say a few words to that effect.
Dr. Stephen Grisham, if you're unaware, passed away unexpectedly on January 10th. He has been a champion for youth services, particularly juvenile justice, for a number of years. I first became associated with him 29 years ago as a brand new social worker out of college, working at one of those days juvenile facilities. And he's one who established and developed and implemented the treatment behavioral program for OJA, all of their training schools. So he was the guru of all things treatment wise for kids in the state of Oklahoma. And so he has been a pleasure learning from him. He has a passion for helping kids' lives, working with staff, working with professionals, helping them be trained and aware of all the needs of working with youth. So his loss has been a significant impact on the state of Oklahoma. He was also eventually became chief psychologist for OJA. He retired a few years ago. But his relationship with OCCY a number of years ago, juvenile competency became an issue that OCCY became involved in. And he was one of the first persons we reached out to help guide us in developing the components that we were involved in. So he's been a significant resource in just developing the training requirements for those evaluators. He's been recruiting evaluators for us. He helps us get them trained. And he was an evaluator himself. Even though he's retired, he was teaching, and he continued to travel all across Eastern Oklahoma to do these evaluations for us, or for the courts, actually. So he's going to be a great loss. In addition to doing all that work, because of his experience and his knowledge and his communication skills, he was our problem solver. So when we had issues with juvenile competency, when a judge or a DA or someone just wasn't on the same page with what was going on, we would call him, say, hey, give us ideas or suggestions on how to respond. Most of the time, he would say, just give me their phone number and I'll work it out, or I'll deal with it. And so most of the time, he did. He got it resolved. So it's a significant, specific loss for us as an agency because he actively assisted us with the work with juvenile competency. So we're going to dearly miss him as a friend, as a mentor, and a professional. And I think it's just important that we spend a few moments to acknowledge his great work and hopefully be inspired by what he's spent over his career trying to help services for kids and youth in Oklahoma.
Thank you so much. Speaking to this, we've created a resolution of remembrance that I would love for us to adopt and vote on and sign that we can present to the family, just to acknowledge the great work that he's done to fight for Oklahoma kids. So I'll entertain a motion to adopt this resolution of remembrance. Have a motion. Second, any further discussion?
I would just add, Oklahoma, so I had the fortune of working with Dr. Grissom as director of OJA. He was one of our board members. And Oklahoma has a juvenile justice system today that we can really be proud of. We've not always had a juvenile justice system which we could be proud of. And the reason, in large part, that we have the system we do today and it works the way it does is because of men and women like Dr. Grissom. And so as we're working through cases and talking through these things, I think just be mindful of he is the reason, or one of the reasons, that we've got a system today that I think everyone in this room can be really proud of, the way that we're working with kids, not at them. So
I agree. I've never met a man more curious to, when it comes to finding a solution. He was truly a curious person, truly wanting to understand, what is going on. So anyway, any further discussion? Okay, please call vote.
Commissioner Aaron?
Yes.
CEO Bittner?
Yes.
Director Cartmell?
yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
District Attorney Hicks?
Yes.
Commissioner Kurt?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Schneider?
Yes.
Judge Warren?
Yes.
Passes, thank you. Okay, moving on to, we will pass this around for each of us to sign. Agenda item number 10, we have a presentation on the update on the Governor's Child Welfare Task Force. And turn it over to Jamie Ledoux. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Do they have these handouts, or I can hand them out if they don't? No. Okay. I'm gonna give them both of them. Okay, well, thank you for having me. My name is Jamie Ledoux. I have the honor of serving in the role of Chief of Innovation at Oklahoma Human Services. And I'm here today to give a very brief, high-level overview and update on the Governor's Child Welfare Task Force. And just as a refresher, I know that this group has had someone come present on the specifics of the task force. So I'm not going to go into all of the background, but a little bit of brief information about it. In 2012, Oklahoma settled a lawsuit regarding our child welfare system. And as we're getting closer and closer to being to the space where we can exit that lawsuit, Governor Stitt, I think, in part, established this task force to make sure that we as a state had a plan in place to continue the progress of the Pinnacle Plan that's been occurring over the last decade. So the goal of the task force was really to make sure that we as a state, as a system, had a plan in place to make sure the progress would continue even after exit from the lawsuit. So it was an honor to work with this group of individuals. They had a very ambitious task to accomplish on behalf of Oklahomans. What I've given you here, I gave you a full list of the formal recommendations from the task force. I'm not going to go into all of them, but I also have given you sort of a grid that you see up on your screen. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to just walk you through this document here, because it gives you a very high level overview of the progress we're making as a state on these actual recommendations. So you'll see at the top, across the top, we've got 5 columns here that are the formal recommendations of the task force. The first one's related to expanding resources and services to prevent families from coming into the system. And then the second is evaluate, implement strategies for supporting and enhancing family engagement. So that's our practice within the system. The third was related to the juvenile court system. And then the fourth is regarding strengthening supports and the role of foster parents to prevent foster parents from exiting our system and to prevent placement disruptions for children that we're serving as well. And then the last one is expand capacity of professionals that support families in the child welfare system. So those are the individual categories. What the task force did for us is they actually put together, some steps under each of these that they wanted us. It was very helpful because they not only put the goals, but they put the first couple of action items that they were recommending that we take under each of these goals. So a little bit about how to read this grid that we've put together. All of the highlighted or the bolded. So look, if you look under the first column, for example, the 1.1 coordinate efforts across system, you'll see the first one that's bolded there is screened out referrals. So everything is bolded on here falls within the responsibility of Oklahoma Human Services. And that's for our purposes because we do have, I would say, a little over half of these recommendations do fall within our responsibility. However, the beauty of this task force is they were looking at the entire system, not just the child welfare agency. The ones that aren't bolded are outside the scope of the authority of Oklahoma Human Services, just for your reference. In the bottom left-hand corner, there are 4 little symbols there. If it has a green symbol next to it, we are, that's considered to be in progress, where we are pretty far down the road and know that we've done enough work to say that we feel comfortable about where we're going with that. There is a red symbol that says not started. So you can look and see in the first column, for example, the one down on the bottom, no work has been started on that one specifically, and there are a few others that haven't. And then the orange symbol means that we've started, but we're not, really far along in that space. And then I'm happy to report that the blue symbol actually recommends that we completed some of these things. And so I'm going to highlight just a little of those for you. One of the things that we've been working on extensively is our expansion of community capacity through supports and resources. So this is our safe family programs across the state. There has been an expansion of that as a result of this work on the task force. We also are working on expanding our school-based service workers. We feel like those workers really play a significant role in preventing families from having to come to the attention of child welfare services or other parts of our system. So we're happy to report that we're making progress there. If you move to the second column, we have a lot of practice changes that have been occurring within the child welfare agency, specifically to how we engage families. And one of the common things that the task force members heard when they went out and they actually did surveys. They conducted surveys with stakeholders, they did focus groups with stakeholders, and they did individual interviews as well. Hundreds of stakeholders had an opportunity to speak into this. And one of the things they consistently heard was that they felt like the individualized service plans that families get when they actually come into our system, that they're not really individualized, that they're sort of cookie cutter. And so there's been a lot of work to update the language, actually put in the service plans some hope-centered language. We have a lot of work going on to become a hope-centered state. And we are putting hope-centered language into all of our ISPs and into the actual process for how we develop those service plans with their families as well. You move down to the bottom of that category. There's a lot of work that's been done to enhance the supports that we're providing to biological families as they first are coming to the attention of our system, and just really educating them on what the process looks like, what to expect, what their rights are, how they can navigate through the system, matching them with peer, parent partners when possible, so that everyone has access to a parent support. That's the end goal there. The third column here is related to the juvenile justice system. And as you all know, the Family Representation and Advocacy Program there's been a lot of work on that over the last couple of years, and significant funding poured into that, a lot of progress there. And we really feel like that's a critical piece in enhancing our system across the state in the future and the development of our system. We feel like that's one of the most critical pieces here, to be able to really give families the supports they need to navigate the system in an effective way and to be able to be successful. We want them to be set up for success from the very beginning. The fourth column over here is related to foster parent supports. We have been working with our Foster Care Association of Oklahoma. They've been matching foster parents with peer supports as well. And they have been working on expansion of that program to help mentor and support foster families to navigate the system and help them be successful as well. The last column is related to expanding the capacity of professionals in the child welfare system. One of the things that we've been looking at is looking at how do we provide the right supports to people who actually are serving the system, because even the behavioral health needs and challenges of these families are very unique. And so making sure that individuals who are supporting these families have sort of cross-training and knowing how the various parts of the systems work and interface with one another, so that they can help support the families as well. So this is a very high level overview. I know that we don't have a lot of time, so I didn't want to go too far with this. I did want to say, though, that the task force, in addition to narrowing down to these 5 recommendations here, they did identify future areas for focus that they recommended for the state. And so I just wanted to put those out there briefly. They didn't go into any specific recommendations, but you all, as you hear them, will know that they align with a lot of other work and initiatives that are occurring across the state too. So the first one was tackling substance abuse within our state. Poverty is the second one. The third one is permanency for teens in our state. And then the fourth one is permanency for children with complex needs. So they recommended that we, as we continue to work through these recommendations, that a next iteration, or an iteration that sort of works alongside this, of our continued reform work, that we focus on these 4 areas as a state in the future. I know it's a lot of information in a short time period. Any questions around that?
You know, it says completed on the ISP. When do we have a timeline of seeing those in the courtroom for families, like the new language and things like that?
That's a great question. They have already started piloting some of this. As far as when it'll expand statewide, I can't say that off the top of my head, but I would be happy to get that information for you, and I can connect back and share that with you. Any other questions?
But it's not your residence.
Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you to Jamie and her team for all of the follow-up here. I think a lot of times task forces meet and they have a bunch of recommendations, and they send an email and print it out, and it just gets dusty and old and no one pays attention to it anymore. So I'm glad that Jamie and her team continue to follow up on these things and making sure that we're kind of implementing the things that we said we would do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, we will move on to agenda item number 12, presentation on the Choosing Childbirth program, and I will turn it over to Jackie Shawnee.
Some handouts that are going around, as we talk, but if you don't mind, Annette, I'm going to combine my two agenda items.
Okay.
Choosing Childbirth and the Health Task Force, because they are very related and could go together. If it's okay with the chair, I'll start with the Health Task Force and then move to Choosing Childbirth, if that's okay with you. Just because of the flow, I think it'll make a little more sense based on some of the recommendations from the task force. So the Health Task Force was established by the governor in 2022. That's the Helping Every Life and Parent Task Force. And it was created really in recognition of Oklahoma becoming a pro-life state and really wanting to meet the needs of mothers, of families, of babies, and make sure that resources are accessible, barriers are eliminated, and that those resources are coming together in a meaningful way. So the task force was asked to look at supporting crisis pregnancy centers in the state, eliminating unnecessary barriers to adoption, encouraging and providing resources to our communities to support mothers faced with unplanned pregnancies, doing justice, love, kindness, and walking humbly in support of Oklahoma mothers and families, educating Oklahomans on the reality of life, and empowering nonprofits. So that was kind of the ask of the task force. There were several recommendations that came from that. I'll walk through a couple related specifically to the State Department of Health and the things that have come from that since then. The first really is around branding and marketing. The task force recommended creating an Oklahoma Life website that really could bring together all of these resources in one place to kind of allow a mother in crisis or a family seeking resources to have a central landing place. That's a huge task because those resources are pretty vast, especially when you start talking about government resources, when you start talking about our faith community, nonprofits. And so the State Department of Health was tasked with standing up that website, that's oklahoma.gov/life. And have ever since then been seeking out, and that is ever evolving. I would encourage you to look at it. And if you have resources you feel like need to be reflected on there that aren't there, reach out to us because it is a website that's being heavily utilized, not only by folks within the government entities, community health workers, social workers, but by families. And so we're often adding to that or taking things away that don't exist anymore. So please take a look at that in kind of your space and let us know. But that landing site was launched shortly after the conclusion of this task force and really speaks to a lot of those resources. So that was one of them. A second one, and I apologize, I'm going to jump around a little bit just so I can talk about this in a little more succinct manner than I originally put it together for you. But the second one was around pregnancy resource navigators or PRNs. This program was really birthed, no pun intended, really came to fruition out of discussions in the task force on what has already been successful? What have we seen, programs that we've done that are already making meaningful change? And so we started talking about home visiting and how impactful home visiting programs have really been in the state. And we also started talking about community health workers and just the ability for that workforce to really connect with communities, connect with mothers, have meaningful relationships, and be able to really kind of serve them in a more meaningful, personal way. And so we talked about what would a model bringing kind of those two already known successful models together look like. And that's where pregnancy resource navigators came to fruition. And what they really are a form of a community health worker that's really just hyper-focused on meeting needs of mothers, babies, families, kind of that first year, pregnancy through that first year. And so they have been, in fruition for about a year, maybe 18 months now, really focused on this specific kind of area of ensuring our mothers in the state and new babies have everything they need to not only have a healthy pregnancy, but a healthy start to life. Some fun marketing kind of side of that really is every baby that group is connected to gets a new little Oklahoma onesie, just kind of celebrating the family. So that's been another recommendation. The third recommendation really related to the State Department of Health was around funding, continued funding. So the task force recommended the State Department of Health and the legislature to identify opportunities to provide and expand available funding through the existing Choosing Childbirth Act. And then related to that, really addressing maternity desert services that are needed. And so another recommendation included identifying opportunities to expand health services to women in maternity deserts. So that is where we saw an existing act that was already in place starting in 2017 called the Choosing Childbirth Act, really start to get expanded focus and kind of attention and look at kind of the opportunities we had within that to really kind of expand the health task force recommendation. So just a little history, you have this information in front of you. I'll touch on a few things around choosing childbirth, and Annette, I realize I'm jumping on my agenda items, so I apologize. But so original legislation was put forth in 2017, House Bill 1703, that codified a new section of law creating the Choosing Childbirth Act. This funding started at $2 million a year, and I believe the next year or the year after was bumped to $3 million a year. That was to go to a grant supervising entity to support women in carrying their child to term and continuing up to the child's first year. OSDH was given the responsibility of administrating those dollars and worked with one specific grant supervising entity for several years to get those funds out to women. A lot of lessons learned there, a lot of great work that was done, but it was also quickly realized that a lot of the feedback we got from PRCs around the state and other such providers was really that funnel's kind of tight. We can open that funnel up a little bit more to get those dollars out quicker and expand the dollars, that would be very helpful. So through work with just a lot of partnerships, the language and the ask for choosing childbirth was expanded just this last year to really allow for additional awardees to be made based on kind of this very strict call to action for the Choosing Childbirth Act in supporting pregnant women and families. And at that point also was expanded another $15 million awarded. So we have recently, just at the end of last year, kind of gone through a no-fo process that really looked at legislative intent around the childbirth program. And you should have another handout to you, the Choosing Childbirth awardees at a glance, that you can really see kind of how these dollars were distributed. There were 13 awards that were made. 3 of those we would consider more GSEs, those grant supervising entities that have multiple awardees under them and have a kind of a more large scale presence throughout the state. The rest are kind of the medium to lower, more direct service to an actual entity, maybe an actual PRC or individual program. This is just kind of a brief explanation about how these awardees intend on serving and using their Choosing Childbirth dollars. I think if you read through that, you'll find that they're pretty vast. So we really focus this first round of funding on what we consider infrastructure. So saying, where are our maternity desert areas? Are there existing programs that just need to be additionally resourced? Or are there programs that intend on standing up a new service within these maternity desert areas? Let's make sure we're focusing statewide presence on ensuring that we have these dollars going to services for women statewide. Really kind of meeting the call from the task force addressing maternity desert areas. And so really these dollars, this first round are really considered those infrastructure dollars. There are, of course, additional needs that will continue to arise. We're also really focused on making sure these 13 awardees are creating a network, that they're not working in silos. That's where you'll see the pregnancy resource navigators trying to pull some of those together to leverage those resources to say, there's an awardee over here with addressing transportation, there's a PRC here that needs to be able to get women to their PRC or make sure they're matched up, they're working together in this network. And so really being able to say, okay, we've meaningfully pulled together all of our resources, these networks are created, and wholeheartedly understand where our gaps still remain and be able to speak with good hard data on what that still looks like for women and families in the state. So that's just a very brief overview of the Health Task Force, specifically where it pertains to the State Department of Health, how that led to the development of kind of some new programs addressing some of our issues around maternity care in the state and the Choosing Childbirth program expansion. So with that, I'll ask for questions if there are any or comments.
Really exciting. Any questions? Thank you so much for presenting. I'm sorry I jumped around on the agenda a little bit, but thank you for accomplishing both of those at the same time. Appreciate you. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 13, Executive Director's Report.
I just want to, you do not have a written report right now that will be forthcoming, but I want to highlight a couple things. We have a new juvenile competency evaluator, a program coordinator. I think that's what the program coordinator, Mr. Richard Yahola, he's back here in the corner. And that is the first time we've ever had a dedicated staff person to do that work. So we are super excited to have him on board. We stole him from the Department of Rehabilitative Services, and he's hit the ground running, and we're excited to have him. In regards, yeah, we're excited. In regards to the executive order regarding space, as you may well already know, we reduced our footprint prior to the pandemic even being known, it was on the earth, to come here, and we do not have space to bring everyone back every day of the week. We're doing our best to figure out a plan to maybe have some that are permanently teleworking to come more often than they are. But it's gonna take us a lot of thought because truly we're busting at the seams. And the idea of bringing people back in teams where you're not just bringing them back to bring them back for that sake, but to make it meaningful and strategic, it's gonna take some effort for us to figure out how that would work. So we will probably, I feel certain, in that first quarterly report that we have to provide to OMES, be reporting that the staff are still teleworking and that we're in stages of trying to figure out how to maybe rotate people through. But I'm not really sure how we'll do that even without extra space. I mean, it would be, people would be parking in here, or, I mean, it's just really not perfectly conducive. Our offices are full, including what we built as commuter offices. They're almost always full every day. So it's something for us to consider. I want to thank the commissioners that were involved the other day in a community listening session. CEO Bittner, Director Cartmel, and it was Director Tardy Bono, and a few others. I'm just gonna say 2 hours of your time is a very long time, and you were very attentive, and even more so, you were gracious in your response at the end, and I thought it was very impactful. I know you did too, but I just want to thank you for your time. It was very, very, I thought, powerful. We did go through our budget hearings this week. We had our Senate hearing first, had questions, nothing really concerning or outstanding. It's always just a gamble of where you fall in the totem pole on what you might get. As you may recall, we're just simply asking for some additional money for staff. We're not trying to create anything new, do anything different. We just want to be able to carry on the activities as charged. We also had our House meeting. We hardly spent any time talking about our budget. We had great conversations, really very strong conversations, but we didn't do much about the budget, but it seemed to be a very supportive environment as well. And I do want to just mention that the grand jury petitions that I think were in my report last time, the 3 that have been filed in Tulsa, Oklahoma County, and Grady, none of them had enough signatures to move forward, so those have all been dismissed. There may be more coming, but those 3 are dismissed, and we won't be talking about those 3 counties much more, probably. Last but not least, for those who have known or know Dr. Bob Block, who was our first chief child abuse examiner in the state of Oklahoma. He's had many, many roles in this state. He has been an unbelievable friend to OCCY and probably pretty much every system that is around this table and more. Dr. Block is under hospice care, and he's receiving cards and letters of just, thanks and appreciation for all he's done for this state. And I have a card. If you just want to put your name on it, if you don't have a personal connection to him, if you want to write something, please do. I'll be writing a very long note in this card, just to tell him that through the years, I've known him on Child Death Review Board. I've known him with the he is the reason the multidisciplinary teams exist. He went to a conference in Wyoming, and I remember him coming back and being excited and saying, we need to stand these up. And I believe that was around 1995. I sat across the desk from Delynn Fudge at the time at the health department, who was ordered to get freestanding teams in existence. And at the time, there were only 3 child advocacy centers in the state: Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and the Unser Center in Pot County. And his idea of how to fill in the gaps around the rest of the state and provide effective but inexpensive structure for primarily rural Oklahoma really made a lot of sense at the time. So he's the reason that exists. He has been the president of the American Academy of Pediatrics. He pushed for board certification across the country for chief child abuse examiners. He's really been a force of nature in this arena. So stop by on your way out and at least sign your name, because he's an extraordinary person and I want him to know that. So I'll just end with that, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Director Jacoby? Thank you so much for your report. Okay, next on the agenda is agenda item number 14. Any announcements from the commissioners? Any announcements?
Make one really quick one. We're celebrating families and children in rural Oklahoma. Custer and Washita County were awarded to be a family resource center. We hired our executive director yesterday, so we're super excited for our families in Western Oklahoma.
Awesome.
Tricia Howell, who some of you may know, is DHS's current child welfare director. She's been in that role for the last 2 or 3 years. She's done a lot for the agency. Her last day is going to be January 31st. It's public, it's announced. We are in the process of trying to identify and recruit and bring in that next child welfare director. As director, I feel like that's probably my most important hire. It's probably more important than whoever's in my seat. And so if anybody has anyone that you think may be 1% interested, please let me know. I'm happy to talk to them because I think it's one of the most critical jobs in the state of Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
So. And Tricia's done a fantastic job.
Thank you. Any other announcements? All right, chairperson comments. I would just like to say I appreciate the discussion today. I know sometimes at this table we have to talk about hard things and do hard things, that we all have different viewpoints. We see it from a different trajectory. And I appreciate you all coming to the table and doing the best we can to work for Oklahoma kids and for the people that we're accountable for. So I appreciate the discussion and the work that everybody's done to move forward as a commission to do what's best for Oklahoma kids. So thank you all. And with that, I will go ahead and call us adjourned at 11:43.